Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brett Davis Unleashed. I was going to say Brett Davis Undisputed, but it's Brett Davis Unleashed on IQ Podcast at Attorney King Studios in beautiful Coronado. Thank you, King, for all that you do. And my other sponsor is Indian Motorcycle of San Diego, as well as the Cosmopolitan Hotel and Restaurant. I'm excited today to finally get a chance, since you've been on this slide, because we have interviewed before, with my good friend Robert DeLaurentis. How you doing?
Doing great, Brett. It's good to chat with you again.
Hey, you look rested. You look really healthy. It must be the sangria and the Zen background there with everything you're experiencing.
You know, this couple months that I've been here in Spain, quarantined for about 6 weeks, has really been an opportunity to rest up, like you said. And it was the first time I was able to take my clothes out of my luggage and actually hang the stuff up. So I feel like I'm slowing down and getting ready for the next major portion of the trip. So it's been good, actually.
So, I mean, you packed probably pretty light, right?
I did. And, you know, you would think that packing for a trip like mine would be not that difficult, but it's one of the things that I dreaded the most because, you know, once you get on the road, it's hard to, you know, buy certain things, and then you're carrying pretty much everything that you need for the entire trip. And for me, that was going to be, you know, polar region, Africa. It was going to be, you know, ocean climates. It was everything. So I really had to condense an awful lot into a small space. So, but yeah, now I'm spread out and actually pretty comfortable.
Good. So for the listeners that are not aware, tell them about your trip and what you're doing and what you've done, because it's a phenomenal story. And I recently read your article in San Diego Magazine. It was phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah, we were really happy about that article. I tried for 3 years to get into that magazine, and finally we did it in pretty fine form, I think. Yeah,
that's the last issue, right?
I think there was one more after that, but yeah, it was very close to the last issue.
It's so crazy. It's a sign of the times, the way things are not surviving.
You know, I don't know if all these businesses that are closing down are just going to reorganize and come back a little bit leaner and meaner, or if it's going to be the end of it. But, you know, in the short term, they probably have some benefits of shutting down. But my trip is a polar expedition, if you go by what the State Department, the National Science Foundation, and the Environmental Protection Agency call it. And the plan was to take a plane that's found, you know, readily in the market, modify it so that its range basically triples, and then fly it on a polar circumnavigation from the South Pole to the North Pole. And the thing that was interesting about that was that the South Pole and the North Pole were the only two places on the planet where peace has always existed. So our plan was to connect those 2 points and everybody in between on our mission of global oneness and peace. So it was one planet, one people, one plane. And along the way, we're doing a documentary, which will be called Peace Pilot to the Ends of the Earth and Beyond. And I'm also working on my third book. The thing that's kind of interesting too is we're carrying scientific experiments, one for NASA and one for the Scripps Institute of Oceanography in San Diego. And the Scripps experiment's really cool because they found plastics in all the bodies of water on the planet and also on the Earth, all over the planet. But they haven't tested for plastics in the atmosphere. So I'm carrying, it's basically sticky tape on the wings of the plane and on the nose, and it will pick up these different particles. So we'll be able to connect the land, the sea, and the air together and prove that plastics are everywhere.
I had no idea about the plastics in the air. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, you know, humans actually accumulate a fair amount of plastic in their lungs, believe it or not. And it's the plastic from synthetic clothing. So a lot of that stretchy stuff that you probably use at the gym, and I wear it all the time as well, that lets off these plastic particles. And it's a problem, you know, throughout the world.
I had no idea. We've never talked about this before.
Yeah, I may not have shared that because we're usually pretty fast when we're talking. The other thing is that I'm the first aircraft to use biofuels over the poles.
How interesting.
And at this point in the trip, I'm about 2/3 of the way done with the trip, and I've successfully crossed the South Pole. It was an 18-hour flight Very, very challenging. So much more difficult than the first trip I did in 2015 along the equator. Because obviously the poles are very, very cold, and the distances, the weather, navigation, there's a series of, differences that make it more challenging. But, and then the final piece of this is that we're carrying all the latest aviation safety and technology. So we're showing that the technology works in the most extreme situations possible, which is over the poles. So it's really about taking myself and the aircraft to our absolute limits.
So how's your health holding up?
Pretty good. I've had, since I've been in Spain, what I believe was a cold and then also a flu.
Wow.
If it was a mild version of the whole coronavirus, that's possible. But I recovered in about 3 days. I did have a sore throat. I had flu-like symptoms. There was a couple other things too. I'm trying to remember the last piece that sort of tied it together, but it passed fairly quickly. So I'm hoping that I'm through that now and ready to get on with the trip as soon as the quarantines are lifted.
Well, what did you do, you think, that allowed you to be able to heal your body as fast, especially in a situation where you don't have access to a lot of things when you're traveling like the way you are?
Oh, what was your question? How was I able to heal myself through that?
Yeah, because I mean, you don't have the ability to have a lot of the things that you could just go to Whole Foods for or any other places. Because I'm sure that it's a little more cumbersome to try to fight a cold or the flu when you're on a mission like this.
All I did, Brett, was as soon as I started to determine that something was coming up for me, I just got into bed and I stayed there. I didn't move for a couple days.
Okay.
Aside from going to the restroom or food. And the final thing was I had a tightness in my chest as well.
That sounds like it.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe a pretty weak version of it, or maybe my body actually handled it well. But, it's a little scary being in a foreign country and starting to see those symptoms develop. But it all worked out. I have some support here locally.
Oh, good.
A good buddy of mine has helped me. His name is Michel Gordillo. And he was always available, to give me advice if I needed to find a hospital or whatever. But yeah, I'm alone, but I have support, which is nice.
And you also have a very driven and strong mind, which doesn't hurt either.
It would have been very easy to head back to the United States when the quarantine started happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked with my team and we decided that it would be almost like abandoning the mission. Because we have 90 sponsors, and I made promises to them that we would see this through to the end. We also felt that we could have a greater impact on the planet being here in Spain, which has become the epicenter for the coronavirus in Europe. And then the other piece of it was that, we are doing a documentary, and I am writing the book, and we figured it would be more interesting to be here. And then the final piece, I guess, was actually that I have a pretty good situation right now. After I got kicked out of the first two places, I ended up here in this Zen, retreat or villa. And I knew I was taken care of here, but if I were to go to the United States, I need to find a place to live. I need to find transportation. And the United States was about a month behind Europe. So it made sense to maybe stay here and finish up early rather than going back to the United States and being stuck for another month. Plus, It's nice to be close to the plane too, right? So if I need to move quickly, then I can. If I was thousands of miles away in the United States, that would be a problem.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better, and you've been on my mind almost daily. I mean, you pop into my mind. I think about you all the time, worried about you and wondering how you're doing. And I've always admired you.
That's nice. I was concerned about you, Brett, because I know you had some challenges in your family with illness as well.
Well, it's just part of life, right? You have to do it, and it's always harder when it's somebody else, I think, because you don't like to see the people you care about ill, and then you just have to get through it. You have to figure out how to get through it.
It was funny when I did the South Pole leg of the flight. I assessed my chances for survival, meaning being alive in 18 hours, at about 50%. And when the coronavirus came rolling along, something that we couldn't prepare for in advance, they said, the chances were, 1 to 5%, I guess, depending on who you ask. So we decided to see this just as another hurdle we'd have to clear to have a successful mission. And that's what we've been doing. We just keep moving and keep doing our best.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give anybody out there that's going through challenges and maybe have a vision or a goal, what they want to do? What would you suggest? Any insight of what they could do to overcome their obstacles and become more successful?
Yeah, I've been writing about topics like that. And I think this virus is an amazing opportunity of forced meditation and reflection,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're isolated. A lot of the distractions from life for some people, like work, the noises, the commitments, those things have stopped. So when there's silence, then you're open to the downloads that are available to you, right? It's kind of like when you go for a walk out in nature. When you shut everything else off, then finally you can, receive whatever guidance you're supposed to get. And there's a thing you've probably heard of called the collective conscience.
Right.
And it's the sum total of all human knowledge. And we actually, the spiritual community that I'm a part of believes that you can access that. And usually it comes when it's quiet. The other thing that I think is pretty amazing is that, a lot of people, they get caught up in their daily lives and they're defining themselves by their jobs, by their cars, by their clothes. And, when we're in quarantine again and we're not around people, then that goes away. So if you can't define yourself by those things, well, maybe now you're defining yourself by, hey, I helped out my friend, or I was a good listener to a family member who was going through some challenges, or I'm going to make the world a better place by, infusing some positive thoughts into the world, maybe on social media or writing or whatever. So then we begin to define ourselves by these acts, as humans, as opposed to these things that I have and, the things that I've been doing for a long time. So I think it's, an amazing opportunity to take advantage of those changes. And then, with challenges, there's also opportunities. And we're starting to see some of that stuff develop, right? There's a cleaner planet. There's a need for medical supplies. There's opportunities to maybe make it easier for people to work at home. There's a lot of things that are changing. So with those changes come opportunities.
And also people maybe that have taken their health for granted and realizing how important it is to have a strong immune system and do the things that maybe, they've forgotten to do because maybe they're busy. I mean, things are being put into perspective.
Yeah, the other thing, that's a great point. The other thing I'm noticing is that I'm feeling very much at peace.
Mm-hmm. You look at it.
And
I see your clarity in your eyes. You look very, very at peace. I see it.
hopefully that wasn't the sangria, but yeah, I've been spending a lot more time just sitting and reflecting. And I don't feel like there's a tremendous amount of stress because, if I'm focused on the moment, then things are under control for the time being. And I guess I'm able to relax a little bit better and I feel happy, and I know other people are starting to feel that way too, because I've been reading about it. And, you did a great post about, yeah, you did a great post. I saw it a number of days ago, but I think you had like 50 comments about all the positive things that were happening in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great, to focus on those things.
Well, I sometimes talk about things that people get irritated with, but a lot of times they put it out there for discussion and I may not even have a belief in it. I just want to hear feedback.
Yeah. And, getting people talking about it is a great way to sort of bring out some positive things and people start to share and they see that they have common challenges.
Sure.
And I hate to use the word suffering, but they're being challenged in the same way. And that sort of connects us, in terms of our common humanity. And it's not just people here in the US, but, everyone on the planet is dealing with these same things. So we can see our connection to them too.
Well, the one thing I like about the show that we're doing now is that we are talking to people all over the world now. Our show's becoming a worldwide show. I mean, we've talked to people in Scotland and, in Spain, like today, and then the United Kingdom. And I mean, we're getting a wider audience because of the whole multimedia thing. But I think the topics transcend more than language barriers and space between where we live. I think we all have those same commonalities when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and they see you broadcast and they go, look, this guy cares about global issues. he cares about people. He's responding just like I am. Really we are very similar, even though our homes are so far apart.
Right. So what's a good website if people want to follow what's going on so they can see more of what you're doing and maybe even donate? I mean, if you're taking that for your foundation.
Yeah, absolutely, Brett. It's www.pole, so POLE 2 TO, pole again, POLE, and then flight, so pole2poleflight.com. And we've, as we've been working on this docu-series, we started out actually intending to do a documentary, and we got so much footage and we liked it so much, we're now breaking it up into 7 different episodes. So
Wow.
it's a docu-series. And next week we present it to Discover. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, you're gonna. I can see. I can see it happening for you on Discovery. It's going to happen big time.
I think so. The Discovery organization bought part of the Explorers Club. They just infused like $20 million. So part of the reason for that is to get access to people like me that are doing flag expeditions. So we think that we stand a pretty good chance. And really, it's a fantastic way to get our message out into the world. So,
Well, any way we can help you, we're there for you.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
Appreciate you. And what's the name of the last book?
Well, actually, next week we're releasing a children's book called The Little Plane That Could. And the book that I'm working on now is called Peace Pilot to the Ends of the Earth and Beyond. And the beyond is the spiritual component of a trip that connects humanity from pole to pole.
Awesome. Well, I always appreciate your time, and I always love talking to you. It just every time we're together, it goes by really quick.
Yeah, it seems like it's been about 5 minutes, but
no, but I really enjoy our time, and I always learn from you. Robert DeLaurentis, it's great interviewing you.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. It's great to talk to you again, and we'll connect up soon.
Absolutely. You take care of yourself.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'd like to thank my sponsors, also King Amanpour for what he does and his love and support as a friend and believing in our show. Also, Chuck Ross with Cosmopolitan Hotel and Restaurant and Indian Motorcycle of San Diego. They're all great sponsors and friends of the show. And this is Brett Davis signing off at Brett Davis Unleashed at IQ Podcast in beautiful Coronado at Attorney King Studios. God bless. Good job.
Thanks, Brett. You make it easy.